What is up, YouTube? Today I'm coming back at you with another video, and today is another tabletop RPG video. Now for today's topic, I wanted to talk about three RPGs that I recommend that are universal tabletop RPGs. So if you've never heard of a universal tabletop RPG, essentially what they are is it's a singular rule set that can be used for any sort of genre or any sort of setting. So if you wanted to play sci-fi, it can do that. If you want to play fantasy, it can do that. If you want to play something modern, like present day, it can do that. And these three RPGs all have the capabilities to do that. Now, one thing that I have noticed about other videos on YouTube that talk about universal RPGs is a lot of times they fail to mention that even though there are universal RPGs that can tackle all of those settings and genres, they all have a specialty. Even universal RPGs have a specialty of some sort. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about why I recommend each one and what their specialty is. And we'll go from the least complex to the most complex, because with the amount of ground a universal RPG has to cover in its core book or books, they can get very complex. So I'm going to talk about the complexity as well, but all three of these recommendations I still consider to be manageable in complexity. They can get complex, but I would find them still manageable. So let's start off with the least complex one, and one that I really enjoy. And that is Savage Worlds. So Savage Worlds has a number of different editions that have been published for it. This is probably the smallest of the universal RPGs we'll taking a look at today. And there's a number of different editions. This is the previous edition. When I bought this was the most current edition, but they've now since come out with the Savage World Adventurers edition, I believe it's called. And they come in really nice hardback covers. But this is the previous edition, and then there's, I believe, an edition before this as well. So Savage Worlds is obviously a smaller universal system, but everything that you need to play any sort of genre is found in this book. Now, in terms of expanding material, because sometimes when it comes to universal RPGs, they don't offer quite as large of a breadth of options. They offer enough to get you to play any sort of genre, but sometimes you want more specific examples and whatnot. This game has 4 different supplemental volumes to expand the different genres that are capable with this. You have a superhero companion, you have a fantasy companion, you have a horror companion, and a sci-fi companion. Now, I own all of those, but I'm not going to be taking a look at those today. We're just going to be taking a look at the core book, but they each expand the options for those different play styles in those books. So, Savage Worlds, what is it? Well, it is a fairly pulpy universal RPG. And the best way I like to look at universal RPGs, the first thing I like to look at is the character sheet. See how complex the character sheet looks? And normally the complexity of the character sheet sort of translates into the complexity of the rules for universal systems, at least in my experience. So, and this is also a good way to point out different mechanics. So, Savage Worlds is done through a sort of step dice system. So as you get better at certain skills, or as you increase your attributes and whatnot, your die that you roll will get larger. So the base success target number is a 4. And so you're trying to roll a 4 or better on your dice. And so if you have a couple points into, say, agility, you're going to be at, let's say you're at a D8. So then you have a 50% chance of success. Instead of when you start, everything starts at a D4, and then you'd only get that 25% chance of success off that D4, and it only gets better all the way up to a D12. Basically, is how the core roll works. Now, that sort of translates into a very pulpy system, and that I would say is the big what's it called, specialty for this system, where this really focuses on pulpy style play. Now, what does that mean? So if you think of pulp, when I personally think of pulpy style play, think of something like Indiana Jones, or how Indiana Jones is always one step ahead of everybody, and he kind of goes through these crazy, fantastic scenarios, and it's like larger than life action. You can also think of like the Pierce Brosnan, James Bond movies, sort of similar to those style of cinematic play. That's the sort of play that you'll be experiencing here. Now, creating a character in this is a point-buy system where you have a set number of points to increase your die size across your skills and your traits. You can do complete point buy that way, but there's also archetypes, which are sort of templates that you can spend your points on instead. So like there's obviously a fighter, different types of fighter archetypes. There's like face for like sort of your head of the party, or the leader, or the mage. And they've got archetypes for every genre in here. So you have like a driver for something modern, a fighter with a great weapon, sort of your fantasy. A leader can be sort of attributed to any genre. Mage is another fantasy one. Marksman, it can be either fantasy or modern or sci-fi, really. And then you have like, let's see, where's where sci-fi went? So you've got like scientists and weird scientists, pilots. So they've got a number of different archetypes here that you can you sort of spend your points on if you don't want to do a full point buy system, which is nice. And that gives you sort of starting skills and starting attributes that are predetermined for you. And it also gives you some guidelines on how many hindrances and edges to take. You also have races. Now, races are also, again, more of just something that modifies your attributes and your skills. And the base race is considered human, so all the base rules are geared towards human. But if you want to play a different race, each one of these sections for these example races will tell you how to modify your character to apply those racial benefits. And it also gives you templates here to create your own races as well. Skills are basically, how skills are in any game, except instead of, increasing a modifier, you're increasing a die size. And then we also move on to hindrances and edges. So hindrances and edges are a common theme amongst universal RPGs, where they're sort of like feats in D&D, but hindrance is sort of like the opposite of a feat. And normally you're required to take at least some of both. And those give you sort of special abilities, and they do have requirements in this game. So you require to be what level you are, so like a novice, and then what die level your skill is to take certain edges. And then hindrances are character flavor in this, but you are required to take at least one hindrance in Savage Worlds, and that just gives you like something to play off of, like bad eyes, you can be blind, bloodthirsty, elderly, greedy, stuff like that. And that just sort of provides negative modifiers to certain things, and it makes your character a little bit more fleshed out. So gear section, the gear is obviously tailored towards every single genre. You've got a really nice spread of gear here to work with. What's one of my favorite things about it is the gear's easy enough to understand, and there's a lot of it. And my favorite thing is there's a standardized cost system amongst all your gear. So for instance, it just says a number, like, so for instance, leather armor is just 50. Now that can be $50, 50 gold coins, 50 sci-fi credits. They leave it up to the GM to decide what the actual nomenclature for the cost of things is, which I really like, but it standardizes everything. So no matter what genre you're playing with, you can see how much things cost. Now, in terms of this core book, the sci-fi section for weapons is probably the weakest, and the sci-fi section for gear is probably the weakest, and that's probably where you're going to want to get the sci-fi companion. But for an overall complete rule set, it's really easy to understand. It's really quick to get into. All the enemies, because there is some example enemies in the back, which not every Universal RPG has a bunch of enemies to look at. All the enemies are 1 to 3 hit points, so it's a very quick action. One good hit will kill an enemy usually, except for like boss monsters, which require a number of hits. So it's very fast, very pulpy, and a really great way to make cinematic adventures in any genre. And so, for example, I like running sci-fi in Savage Worlds. That's probably the way. That's normally the way I go Savage Worlds. But that is my my first recommendation for a Universal RPG. So the second one I have here is probably the least popular one, and probably middle complexity, and that is Big Eyes, Small Mouth, which it says anime and manga adventures on it, which might not be for everyone, but it is capable of handling any genre. So if you've never watched anime or you're not into manga at all, anime and manga is a very broad form of media where it can encompass everything from sci-fi, drama, romance to fantasy and action. It covers every genre. It's just the ways it covers those genres. There's certain tropes in anime and manga that are a little bit different than Western media. And that's the big strong point for this Universal RPG, is if you want those anime and Eastern style like manga tropes in your Universal RPG, this covers them very well. So, Big Eyes, Small Mouth is it runs on the Tri-Stat system, which the Tri-Stat system is pretty straightforward. It's about a medium complexity. Your characters have 3 stats, and just like Savage Worlds, it is a point-buy system where you can spend your points to go into your various stats and your skills. And obviously you have racial modifications here, and it's a complete 100% point-buy system, but just like in Savage Worlds, there are also templates. So templates work the same way as the archetypes in Savage Worlds, where if you don't want to do a full point-buy system and you have sort of general idea of what you want your character to be, and it's common enough, you can pick up one of these templates at point cost instead. And those templates cover all of your anime genre tropes, such as, and they also have racial templates as well. Like I said, there's a number of different races as examples, but you can always make your own races. And there's quite a number of races in this book too. Everything down to like a slime, which is great. Let's get past the races here. All right, so here's the class templates. So the class templates are, your sort of general outlines like demon hunters, gate guardians, exorcists, detectives, and a pop idol, a hacktivist, martial artists, a magical girl or guy, mecha pilots for your sci-fi stuff, a Pokemon trainer type class, and ninjas, mercenaries. Like I said, all the templates cover the your standard anime manga tropes, but it is also a complete point-buy system. So if you don't want to take a template for races or classes, you can do complete point-buy and really tailor it towards any sort of genre that you want. I really like the Sentai member. I haven't yet used this for a Power Rangers game, but I would love to use this for a Power Rangers game. But yeah, lots of templates there. And so your stats you only have 3 stats, and they basically cover your sort of your mind, your body, and sort of your soul, which is sort of like your magical stat. But you have a bunch of different attributes, which are sort of like your skills that you can put points into, and basically just buy whatever skills you want your character to be good at. And the resolution mechanic for this system is a 2d6 plus modifier system, so you do get a slight bell curve, which is really nice, so you kind of have sort of a bounded accuracy, which is much different than the pulpy, swingy feel of Savage Worlds. And it's a fairly easy system to really get into. In the back here, it has a nice cheat sheet, so all the things you really need to know to run the game are back here somewhere. If I can, there's the character sheet. There is a cheat sheet somewhere back here. There's a cheat sheet in this book. Oh, there it is. So there's like sort of your cheat sheet that gives you basically all the most common things to that you're going to be rolling against, and the sort of abbreviated version of the rules for them. So as you can see here, opposed dice rolls, you roll your 2d6 plus your stat plus your skill group, and then the other person rolls theirs, and sort of similar for attacking. And then it gives you like sort of what I really like about this little cheat sheet here is it gives you the dice distribution for your rolls, so you can kind of see where the curve is going to be based on sort of your modifiers, which is super nice from a GM perspective. So yeah, you can pretty much play everything in here. Now, equipment, it's got a really nice section of equipment, but this is all going to be tailored towards sort of your Eastern tropes in terms of equipment. So it has like your modern stuff like machine guns, sniper rifles, rocket launchers. You have blaster rifles, blaster cannons, and stuff like that, and energy swords and energy whips. And then you also have, on this page, you know, your older stuff. So you have like your mace, your longsword, your axe, ballistas, stuff like that. So you have every genre covered here in terms of your armor and stuff. Here's some of your armors available, all the way up to a high intensity power armor, all the way down to like thick fur. Everything is pretty much accounted for. You have multiple levels of shields, and then you have some vehicles as well, everything from like sailing vessels and wagons all the way up to, I believe there's an assault mecha right here, and they're split by technology level, which is really nice. And now we'll move on to the enemies. So you have a section here on animal companions, which is really useful if you're going to play sort of a more modern setting, but I love the artwork in this book as well. It's super nice. There are a number of, so you have like soldiers, imps, nobles, centaurs, cultists, apprentice. You have a couple different examples here of different types of enemies that you might face, and like I said, here you've got everything from Eastern and Western dragons down to like hamsters in terms of animals to fight against. And it does also give you rules for creating your own creatures and enemies, which is really nice. And it gives you a lot of great advice for playing some of the genres that you might not see in other role-playing games, like shoujo, which is sort of like a very dramatic, like high school-y sort of like drama, which is great that it is capable of playing that. But yeah, a lot of different cool stuff in here. Definitely recommend that one. It's about medium crunch, And there are expansion books as well. There's Big Eyes Small Mouth Extras, which is a whole another book about this size, just extra material to throw in there, so extra equipment, extra packages, all sorts of stuff like that. So it's a really, really great book, really high quality book as well. Probably, in my opinion, the highest quality production value is this book. But yeah, that's probably a medium crunch one. And now for the last one I'm going to recommend here is probably the most well-known and the highest crunch one, and that is actually one that comes in 2 volumes, and that is GURPS 4th edition. So GURPS is a extremely modular universal RPG. Obviously, it stands for Generic Universal Role-Playing System, and it is split into 2 volumes. So the basic set characters is really all you'll need if you're going to play this game, but if you're a game master, you will need both books. The basic set characters is literally just character creation, and there is a simplified combat section in the back, but it is mainly just character creation, which means that this thick book here is just character options and character creation, which is crazy. So let's just take a look at that first as we talk about it. So GURPS is probably got the most support for it out of any of the 3 that we have here. There's dozens and dozens of books that you can add on to the core set here. But the core set is extremely comprehensive and can cover pretty much everything you need. Like, I don't really think that any other books are necessary other than the basic set here. And so the main dice mechanic for GURPS is a 3d6 roll plus or minus modifiers. And you're trying to reach various different target numbers. And it can be as simple as, you know, just rolling, you know, like just your 3d6 plus like 5 or something like that, all the way to like multiple modifiers stacked on top of each other. It can get complex, but it by default is fairly simple when you really get into it. Now, the most intimidating part about GURPS is character creation, I think, and getting people to create things, because character creation is extremely open. There aren't really templates in the basic set here for creating a character in GURPS. It is just pure point buy system, and it has the most options possible. So you have your physical attributes, like strength, dexterity, and stuff like that. And you have some secondary characteristics as well, like hit points and stuff that are derived from your attributes. And then you have like social backgrounds. It talks about like technology levels. So depending on your technology level, certain things will be disallowed in terms of the next section here, which we get into like our advantages and disadvantages. So this is sort of like your edges and hindrances in Savage Worlds, but just taken to the extreme. So there are so many. So you have everything from like 360 vision, so you can create a character that has, you know, the ability to see everything around them at all times. And they have a point value for that. And there's no races or classes. It's literally, you buy the advantages and disadvantages that you want with your points that would reflect the type of character you want to play. So if you wanted to play like a, I don't know, a gelatinous cube, you would buy like 3D spatial sense, which doesn't necessarily include 360 vision, but you have the ability to tell what's around you at all times. Or you probably need to get some acidic blood, which I think is in here somewhere. So there's tons of stuff in here. You would need to, you know, there's all sorts of different advantages and disadvantages. Everything you have, digital mind. So if you were like had an artificial brain, or does not breathe, that'd be something you'd take if you were trying to be a gelatinous cube. You know, doesn't sleep would be another one. And like there's all sorts of, you know, advantages. Extra mouth, extra life, extra legs, extra heads, flight, you know, stuff like that. Lots of advantages and disadvantages. And disadvantages are in the next section, which are just as you know, in depth. Where you can be cold-blooded. You have chronic pain, chronic depression, color blindness, cursed, cowardice. You know, I know you can be missing limbs, stuff like that. And then you go into your skills, which your skills are pretty much the bread and butter. Most of the time, you're going to be rolling your 3d6 plus or minus skill modifiers, and they're extremely in depth. Everything from astronomy and artillery skills, or just being an artist, all the way. I know panhandling is a skill, your ability to beg for money, counterfeiting, cooking, detecting lies, cryptography, dancing. What other ones do they have? You know, electronics repair, exorcism, environmental suit escape, fast talking, fast drawing, falconry. They've got all sorts of skills in here. Pretty much any sort of skill that you can think of, like teaching even, is accounted for in the character creation book. They do have a base magic system. Now, in the rules it says you don't need to use magic, obviously, but if you do decide to choose magic, they do have a magic system laid out for you here. There are also more than one book that offers multiple different magic systems as well. But the base magic system, I think, is probably the most simple of them. You do have character templates, which are kind of like how they are in Big Eyes, Small Mouth, and Savage Worlds, except there's not really, you know, a whole lot predetermined for you. It just more tells you how to make them. Equipment list. So your equipment list is probably the most vast in terms of the RPGs we've looked at today. You have quite a number of different equipment. So these are just the melee weapons. You still have tons of weapons. You have flails, pole arms, two-handed swords, all sorts of different things. And then you have muscle-powered ranged weapons, and they all have a technology level listed on the side here that tells you what technology level it is. And then you have heavy weapons like liquid projector, like flamethrowers, and guns, various different types of guns. And then you go into armor, everything from fur armor all the way up to, you know, let's see, flak jackets and space armor, battle suits, stuff like that, and personal shields, and then how to improve your character. And I would say this is an example character sheet here. It's probably the most complex of the RPGs. And its real strong point is providing an RPG that is bounded in reality. Because of the 3d6 system and because of the base rules in the basic set here, it really focuses on trying to make it as realistic as possible. And there's you know, a bunch of traps and stuff in here. Not a whole lot of monsters and animals. There's a little bit in here, but I honestly think the biggest problem with the basic set is just the lack of adversaries detailed in the basic set. So like the fantasy monster section is literally just in this chunk at the top here and this here. So you get like, what, 3 monsters in the fantasy monster section? That's just a travesty. That's less fantasy monsters than this little book here. And it's not like their stat blocks are huge or anything, so that's just a little bit upsetting there. It has a little bit of, you know, like standard monsters and whatnot, and it doesn't have a whole lot of example monsters or example like ships for example. It does give you like a vehicle combat system, but it doesn't have like a whole bunch of like example vehicles or anything. So that's the biggest downside to GURPS, I would say, is it is a toolbox, but it is very much like you have to build all the things that you want yourself. So like if you want a spaceship, yeah, you gotta spend some time in your prep work to make the stats for your spaceship. Or if you want to fight a chimera, you've got to spend the time in your prep work to stat out a chimera. Whereas, you know, Big Eyes, Small Mouth and Savage Worlds has a decent number of templates already available, so you don't necessarily have to do all the work yourself. But GURPS, I would say, is probably the most easily moldable out of the three here. But yeah, that is my my last recommendation there. So let me get all three of them out so you can see them all together. Okay, so here are my three recommended universal RPGs. Like I said, they each have their strengths and weaknesses, and I think they each have a place. And I don't think there's really much overlap between these three, so that's why these are the three I have. There are other systems out there like the Cypher system or the Genesis system, but those systems have some overlap with the ones that I already enjoy. And I already enjoy these three systems, and I really don't see what another universal RPG could offer me that I don't already have in these three here. So these are my three recommendations. Let me know in the comment box below what you think about each of these games. Do you have any other recommendations for universal RPGs? Let me know in the comment box below. I'm always happy to talk about other games. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.